Another one of the big issues that's big at the moment connected to climate is obviously, and particularly in North America and Europe, is the amount of meat-based proteins that are being eaten versus vegetable-based protein, vegetables and stuff.
So I was going to ask you about this because this is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
How that part of our diet and consumption is transforming. So would you say that a lot of the chefs that you work with, is there that kind of hyper awareness towards plant-based diets and avoiding meat, and is that kind of something global, or is that something that we're really bombarded with as messaging here in the West?
So I think it's shifting very quickly. I mean, if you talk to certain chefs, they would say that one of the problems has been, as people move into the middle class, the perception is you move your diet towards a more Western diet, which is meat heavy.
I think China is one of those, right?
China, India, but like even India, which is like probably one of the continents or countries which has had, a vegetarian base to most of its diet, a very strong vegetarian influence, is shifting very quickly to meat-based proteins.
Wow.
And so you're seeing that happen very quickly. And, it's not happening maybe at the level of, say, China, but you are seeing that happen. And it's really interesting because their cuisine celebrates vegetables in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing that also in different parts of sub-Saharan Africa as well, where, there's been more starches and plant-based, but now moving towards more animal-based proteins as people, find more income. And so I think, in the chef world, there definitely is awareness. In our network, we've looked a lot at some of the research that's come out, things like the Eat Lancet report, which talks a little bit about, how do you feed a population by 2050 and what would the global plate look like in order to avoid the 2 degrees warming. And I know there's been a lot of criticism of that report and a lot of debate. I think most of that criticism and debate is like people saying, oh, you're telling me not to eat meat, and it's actually, they haven't, if you've read even the summary, that's not what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically saying that, we need to have a much more balanced diet. And there's certain parts of the world that are eating way too much of certain things and not enough of others for us to be sustainable. And there's other parts that are not eating enough of certain things. And then, so it's about that. And that goes back, I think, to one of the biggest challenges in this is that people want these absolutes. And so one of the things I've been noticing, and this came up in our recent meeting that we had with chefs, where we were having this debate. We'd had somebody come and talk from Eat Lancet, and they talked all about it. And the next day we had Patrick Holden from the Sustainable Land Trust talking about, cattle and how you should eat meat, and that's very sustainable. And so there was this conversation where we were hearing both sides of the story, which is something we really believe in at the Chef's Manifesto. Is we don't want to tell people what to think, we let them decide. But out of that conversation, one of the chefs said, okay, hands up, who's a meat eater and who's a vegan? And it was at that point that I realized this is our problem, because that's the debate that's going on,
right?
Which is, we push it out to the extremes, which say you're either a meat eater or you're a vegan, which is kind of crazy, because what's a meat eater? You think about it. It's not somebody walking, there's no one walking around just chewing on a leg of a cow. And if we all became vegan, it's actually a problem as well, because the world can't actually support that, without the climate going crazy. So we've got to these extremes where the debate happens in the media, and people then get lost when
it becomes very black and white, and
going, am I meant to be that, or am I meant to be that? Instead of actually looking at what the message is, which the message is saying, we need to change how we create a plate. We need to stop seeing the animal-based protein as what the plate is designed around. And that's something that in the chef
I agree,
world,
and there's been some good examples of that. There was restaurant, The Grain Store, wasn't there? Bruno Lebois, I think he did a great menu there a few years ago when they were open, where he had really, and this was before everyone was talking about this, and he was really championing this idea of, you can have 7 courses and there could be meat on a couple of them, but it would really, it's not the protagonist, it's not the main focus of what that dish is meant to be about. And, that's inspired even things like what we do on our menu here, which is we'll have meat on 1 or 2 kind of out of 10 courses. But the idea is you can do so much with all these other ingredients.
Exactly. And this is this is where I see, and this is about the different thinking. And so, when it comes to the plate, that's the kind of conversation that I think chefs can lead on. But there's still not, like when people say to me, oh, can you suggest some vegan or plant-forward restaurants? It's still a very short list that you're putting out there.
Sure.
Very short list.
Yeah.
Now, we're not in any way advocating that everyone should be vegan.
Yeah, sure.
Or plant-based.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that we need to celebrate plants more.
Yeah.
Because they've not been given the same level of celebration as some other ingredients. So we need to find them, discover them, work with them, and we're trying to partner with companies and with chefs that are working in that way. So there's chefs that are, setting up trading on certain ingredients. We're working with, we've done some work with Unilever and WWF on this Future 50 Foods, where they've created a list of 50 foods that they say are good for people and good for planet. And so these are ingredients which they've said should be brought into the menu because they can be grown in a good environmental way, but they also have a good nutritional profile. And so they've created flavor pairings and notes and all these kinds of things for chefs to be able to use to integrate into their menus. And so for us, those kinds of practical examples become good, case studies or examples that you can say to chefs, here's some examples of, if you're just looking for something to do, why don't you take one of these ingredients and try and play with it?
Yeah.
Get it in your menu, champion it,
sure.
Learn how to use it. And as you start,
and are these common everyday ingredients, or are these, if you look at that list, are they a bit obscure? Are they ingredients that chefs aren't maybe used to dealing with? Or
so a lot of them they're regionally they would be used to dealing with some of them, but not globally. So you've got,
but these would be sustainable on a global scale.
They would be sustainable on a global scale, but obviously in certain areas they'd be more seasonal, they'd be more available, they'd make more sense. But a lot of the time, there's things like millets, for example. Most chefs have not had a lot to do with millets. There's, seaweeds, there's, cactus, there's, all kinds of other different things, sometimes it's things like, the beet greens, which most chefs wouldn't know what to do except throw in the compost. They wouldn't know how to treat it. They wouldn't know how to use it. They wouldn't know how to pair it. But it's in every kitchen. Often, not every kitchen, but it's in a lot of kitchens. So these are sometimes it's a skill thing, sometimes it's a question of how, not what. And so this is where then I believe champion chefs can start to demonstrate that.